There we go. All right. So what are we doing here?
I forget what the plan was. Were we gonna freestyle it? I mean, you had mentioned a few things.
I was thinking.
Oh no, dude.
Yeah.
You gotta tell me the story about you getting beat up though, for sure.
Oh, okay. So let's see. 2000. No, it was about 19. I keep waffling back and forth between 95, 96, and 97. I can't remember how far along it was. I know that I was driving, that I had my truck, my favorite truck that I ever had, that had 2 gas tanks, and it was like painted purple that faded into another color, and it had a 289 engine. So you can imagine, and a speaker system that back in that time period was like the most, like high caliber thing you can have in the South. So you can only imagine how, excited and crunk I was to have that kind of truck. Anyway, the point being that I had a few vehicles before this time period. So it makes me think that it was later than 95, 96. I would have only been like 14, 15 around that time period. So I think the older probably is more accurate. So 97, 90, even 98. What would I be, 17? Anyway, so the all of that to say that I was, the UFC had been out at this time for long enough that I had seen several UFCs had already been, like won over to Jiu Jitsu, and that I was just like watching those fights and studying, trying to learn. And it's not the same in the same way that you can watch professional baseball, or better yet, that you can watch professional bowling and then go bowl and just be the worst bowler in the world. It's like that. You're not really learning. You're just watching people that are good at it, but without learning to go from like absolute nothing to I got a little bit, and then all of a sudden I got an okay amount. At this point, I was at 0. But I thought in my head that I was like, I've watched these fights, and I am lining myself up with that. So I didn't even know what that was, though. I only knew that the fight happened on the ground for him, so that's where I wanted it to go. The thing happened because this guy, who was a year younger than me, he was also on the cross country where they run all the time. He was always running, so good shape, and had somewhat of a reputation for fighting already that I knew about. And somehow his little brother was, I guess my mom was a teacher for a long time. And somehow his little brother got brought up as if he was, I guess, not treated fairly or something along those lines. And I had basically made the comment like, everybody's treated fairly, that if he's being singled out, it's for a reason. It's like based on him, not based on her. And he took that very personal, I guess. And somehow, I guess he ended up getting my number and calling me. And more or less what I remember is him saying, like, I don't remember the first part, but I remember the end was, and I'll kick your effing ass. And then he hung up. So then I called my friends that were also, I guess, kind of like third-party friends of his. And I called them and I said, tell him to meet me this place. It was this road that we all knew about that it kind of goes from one road that leads from the school to a bunch of houses. And then there's this road that goes from that road to another road that goes from the school to a bunch of houses. And it's rarely traveled because the school to the houses and vice versa is the main destination there.
Right.
We got in the middle of that road. And I remember my first mistake was that I grabbed some cooking oil and rubbed it on my face because I was thinking, it's gonna make the punches shear off and they won't cut. And that was correct. That part, there wasn't any cut, but from the beating I took, the punishment rather than cutting just built up these like pumpkin shaped black eyes that seemed to be like a black eye on top of a black eye on top of a black eye.
Damn.
My brother said I looked like that old wrestler Disco Inferno. Do you know that guy?
Yeah.
His face is kind of like all weird looking. So yeah, that guy beat me into that face. And but the way that it happened was, it was honorable in that two guys had some kind of disagreement, had agreed to fight. And after the fight, by the way, there was kind of a little bit of weird thing there just for a second. And then even to this day, right now, if I see that guy, he's like, hey, like we're like best of friends. And not that we are actually best of friends, but I think that he at some point realized, even if I beat this guy up a bunch of times, he's at least still going to fight. And it's not worth it to, have to get dirty and all that kind of stuff. Maybe he came to that conclusion. So I think that he was actually a decent guy and was defending his brother in his mind. But, in reality, I was not guilty. She was not guilty. And he was not guilty because everybody was doing the right thing. And it just got all mixed up. And that's what happens sometimes. I immediately took my shirt off and he took his shirt off. And the fight, there was no, maybe one of my friends might have kind of been the third person to just keep us in kind of a one area, which it turns out that it wasn't going out of that one area anyway. But I really wonder to this day how long the whole event was, because in my mind it was like 20 minutes, but I bet it was like probably 30 seconds.
Right.
But every little stage of the fight, I have a perfect recollection. Or, well, actually, like flashes of the fight, I guess. There's probably things that happened along the way that I don't remember. But what I do certainly remember is, I can't help but look at it from a proper perspective now. But should I tell it from like an untrained perspective and then from a trained perspective?
Yeah, I mean, if you can put yourself in those shoes, like what do you remember it being like? What was if you can recall your perspective, what was your perspective then, and what is your perspective now?
My perspective then was, I need to get the fight to the ground as quickly as possible. So, and I didn't know what to do there. I just knew that if we were fighting on the ground and one person was a jiu-jitsu person, then they were going to win. That's what I thought. So in thinking that, I just, as soon as we started to kind of circle, I just dove right in for a takedown. And with like zero expertise or what have you, I just grabbed like I was a football player, just try to tackle him. And, a fully juiced person, even if they don't know anything, if they've wrestled around with like friends and brothers and whatever, then they just have a little bit of experience, and it's not so hard to defend something like that, even completely untrained, just from playing. And that's what happened. He defended, I don't remember how, but I felt like the takedown wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. And I kept trying and trying and trying, and ended up still in that spot, like low on the takedown while he was standing. And I remember maybe being hit right there once, and I can't remember if I was kneed. Either I was definitely punched right there because of that position. Nobody is concerned with the distance at this point, and my sole concern is take the fight to the ground. His concern is hit him in the face and don't let him do whatever he's trying to do. So that was the battle that was happening. And you can imagine that right there, that one punch, and I think a knee led to 2, 3 more after he realized, oh, this is, I like this. This is going my way. And from that position, I remember standing unexpectedly. He didn't expect it, and punching him from like his face was looking down. And as I stood and punched, his head kind of popped back. So it was a nice shot right to the top lit nose, and it didn't seem to have any effect. I remember thinking, like, man, I full on hit him right dead in the face, and he's still fighting 100%. I thought it would like knock his head off. I thought, if you punch somebody as hard as you can, they're going to die. You're going to knock a hole directly through their head. And that's not how it happens. So I got some shots in, but the level of punishment was already like probably 10-1. So like 20 punches and knees to 4, 5 punches. I don't think I did anything else than punch. Oh yeah, one time, and just think about this. One time, in that I was still trying for the takedown. The whole failure of this thing is wasting energy on that takedown. And but I remember being down there trying my best and remembering how in WWF that there's like was it Degeneration X, where they would punch people in the nuts every so often. So I remembered that, and I tried to punch the guy in the nuts. What a jerk move! So here I am getting beat up, and I think I'll punch him in the nuts. Gosh, man, I really deserved it. I deserved it, and it really benefited me so much in jiu-jitsu, because I knew this is exactly how a chaotic fight takes place. exactly how we trained for it is all the stuff that happened. But separately, me blowing energy is like the definition of the bad guy, like us playing the fight out in our favor. I did the opposite. So at some point after, turning into the Disco Inferno, I was thoroughly exhausted, and somehow in the fracas, we did end up kind of rolling onto the ground, and I ended up under the mount. You can only imagine the exact behavior that you expect is to a T my behavior: push, buck, go crazy. The only thing I didn't do was go belly down, because I did know at least that. But nevertheless, if you don't know anything and the person just puts their hands down for base, then they can punch you as much as they want to, which I later did, So the thing played out exactly as it should if somebody has such a terrible strategy. And I remember standing up after the fight. So punch from the mount, and he said something like, "Hey, you give up?" And I was like, "No." And he said, "If you don't give up, I'm gonna hit you." I mean, it was almost like my repeated thing down the road it was influenced by this whole thing. Like I tried to build my jiu-jitsu character around the beating, you know what I mean? Like all the negative about it.
It had a big impact.
Big, huge impact. So I was like, no, I don't give up. Then I'll hit you again. And I remember like turning my head to look down the road. And for a split second, I was like, what if I just keep going? And then I'm going to keep getting hit, So I was like, I'm done. And boy, was I. Once we got back to, it was my cousins and friends, some people, probably like 5-6 people from school, all excited about the fight. And there I was, Disco Inferno, and extremely exhausted, probably throwing up like 6 to 10 times, and thoroughly thrashed. Oh, by the way, I remember standing up, and I had my shirt that I had taken off at the beginning of the fight in my hand, and blood just like streamed out of my nose and hit the wind. And I remember the wind carrying it like 5-6 feet away. And the thought seeing that, I was like, oh, that's weird. And then I just got the crap kicked out of me.
Yeah.
So the oil, it kept the cuts from happening, but those punches were just absorbed, into the flesh and the skull.
Dude.
So it would have probably been better, honestly, to get cut than to get those big bruises, because that took a long time to heal. I think there's some pictures of me from school around this time period where you can see those black eyes, and I hope that maybe it's in one of my annuals, and if it is, I'll send you a picture and we can put it up. But yeah, that was an epic beating, and for a long time I wanted to think like, oh, it was a good fight. It was it was back and forth.
I got some shots in, right?
Yeah, I got some shots in. That's what I always say about telling people, don't tell the person that's in really bad condition like they're not going to win a fight, but you tell them, I'm sure you'll get a few punches in. You'll be able to do fine. Now, you don't want to give them any kind of false hope like that. So that's what that was. It was just any thought of anything other than you got your butt kicked big time is trying to lie, trying to fool myself. And you wouldn't be able to learn a lesson if you got your butt kicked and then continue to say, no, I did well enough that I didn't really get my butt kicked. I just got tired or something like that. No,
try
that's
to
not
justify it.
Yeah, try to justify it. That's not what happened. So what should have happened? Well, I should have put that crap on my face, number one. Two, I would have kept my shirt on now. I wouldn't have taken anything off. And I wonder if that would have influenced him to not take his shirt off. And if so, I would have used that shirt quite a bit. But trying to initiate the takedown without any kind of setup is saying, hey, okay, I'm gonna try to take you down. It's very obvious when you don't do anything before that you want to take them down. So he saw that coming from literally probably like 10 feet away. And just the human reaction to not let it happen. Somebody's trying to push and you don't want them to push, then you push back. So it's that kind of deal. They're trying to pull my legs. He's trying to tackle me. Well, I'm not going to let him tackle me. So I would have kept my shirt on. I would have used the distance between us to create a pattern. And by pattern, I mean, you already know this, but it's just for the people. I would have created a pattern of, I'm going to keep this distance, whatever distance that we start, I'm going to keep that distance between us for a solid amount of time, like 6 to 10 seconds, unless he just tries to clinch or something. So I'm going to keep the distance. And then as I create the pattern, after 6 to 10 seconds, I'm going to exploit the pattern. So he's stepping, I'm stepping. He's stepping, I'm stepping. If you're listening and thinking he's not stepping, he's going to do whatever he wants to do or whatever he does. If he wants to hit you, then he's going to step. If he doesn't want to hit you and you step back and he doesn't step forward, he doesn't really want to fight. If you step forward and he steps back and you step forward and he steps back, he doesn't really want to fight. But if he steps forward and you step back, and then this happens a few times, it's either going to result in him becoming aggressive because you're steadily out of reach. So he's going to want to get within reach, and when he does, now we're going to go for the takedown. And that's a takedown that will happen because he's not expecting that closeness. He's expecting distance, 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 close. And that's an unfair mechanical advantage. He's moving forward at the same time we're moving forward. And it just makes the clinch very easy. Once in the clinch, I wouldn't have just dropped for probably with the knowledge of how to properly do a double leg takedown, I could have done it then from the position that I was in. But I was in such a poor kind of knees down for the majority that I didn't have any forward pressure. So I should have, if one knee touched the ground, it should have been pushing. I should have been pushing off that foot to try to make that double leg heavy forward rather than just pull his legs out from under him.
Yeah, you didn't understand the mechanics at the time.
Yeah. So once in the clinch, then it's any number of technical ways to get the fight to the ground. But him with me in the clinch, covering and just holding on, he would have used a lot of energy because he was aggressive, and he wouldn't have liked being held onto like that. And he would have definitely been reaching for punches for the face. So because that's not possible right there, or the punches are weak, he would have punched, wasted energy, and the takedown would have been even easier. Then we would have got the fight to the ground. He wouldn't have wanted to be there one bit on the bottom. He would have tried to get up, and I would have held him down.
He would have exhausted himself.
Exactly. So the exhaustion would continue in the other direction. So he wants to get up. He wants not to be on the bottom. So I'm just going to keep him on the bottom with all the different tricks. He's completely exhausted by this point. I could sit up and punch him a few times, but if it had played out like I wanted it to, it would have played out like it would now, which would be mount, controls, he's tired, and rolls to his knees to stand up and choke, put him to sleep. So that ends the fight conclusively, and nobody is really hurt. No disco inferno on either side. So that's the way it would play out. And that's the way it would play out for you. That's the way it would play out for the most part. I could use up the piezo. I could slap, do little jabs. All that kind of stuff just makes the distance closing all that much easier, because we need a reaction. If they're timid, then we can create a reaction. Like if we'd gotten there and kind of just stood face to face and nobody did anything, but he had said, I'll kick your effing ass, then I think it would be justified to slap him right there. Because the fight had been started, on the phone.
Right.
And once we've decided to fight and the fight is on, then, yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with slapping him right there. And that would have probably caused a very, very aggressive reaction, which would have been the perfect window to clinch. So it's just a classic jiu-jitsu, problem. And neither of us knew what to do, but one of us really wanted, one thing, and the other one just wanted to prevent, So it's kind of like jiu-jitsu played out in his favor, because he wasn't trying to do his will. He was just preventing my will. And that worked out. The strategy did work. Jiu-jitsu did work. He just didn't know how to use it. I didn't know how to use it, but it was channeled through both of us. Jiu-jitsu came into the mix and said, you are doing it more like you should, so you're going to win. So, yeah, that's what happened. And that every day for probably the first 3-4 years that I trained was the sole focus. What if I can't get the fight to the ground? What if I, the entry into the clinch, all the things that caused the problems are the things that I just repeated and dug into so deep that I felt like there's no possible way that someone that size will ever in my life hold me down, or not necessarily hold me down, win a fight in all those different ways, like prevent the takedown, land punches, hold the mount. Those are many little victories. But every one of those spots, I have some kind of big time answer. So that context of a fight will never play out again. I could still be beaten, but it would look way, way different. And it would be incredibly more difficult. The person would have to be, they would have to be extraordinarily skilled, and also skilled in Gracie Jiu Jitsu. Because if they weren't, if they were just, here, it kind of turns back into sport versus street. If they were highly skilled in sport jiu-jitsu, then there's still going to be windows for attack and defense and all that based on striking. Anybody, the sport jiu-jitsu person is probably thinking, if they're better, then it's just going to be like a purple belt versus a white belt. The purple belt is going to win. And that's what they think. If they're better, they're going to win. But they're going to be trying to do something, like I was trying to do something. And their response would be, you didn't know how to do it. But my response to that is, although I didn't know how to do it then, I know how to do it now. So if you tried to do that on me, I, like him, would be defending as you tried, to get me down, and be reaching for your face every chance I get. Reaching for chokes and different positions that you're unfamiliar with. And this is all a conspiracy in the minds of sport jiu-jitsu people, that they think it's sport plus punching. So that just means like us versus taekwondo or kung fu or something, that they can use groin shots and eye pokes. But if we have jiu-jitsu plus groin shots and eye pokes, then we have the same type of advantage. On the Jiu-Jitsu Robot channel, but it's one that I posted previously on Facebook, but I guess none of the people that are watching now have seen it. So, but I'll do a narration at some other point.
The one that you posted earlier today?
No, the one that I just put up just now.
Oh, okay. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's a good roll. It's that green belt that, did you ever roll with that guy? It was like a taller 15-year-old green belt. His dad was a purple belt. You know who I'm talking about?
No, I don't recall. I don't recall there being a green belt. Was it Rockwall or Forney?
It was Forney, and his sister was an orange belt.
I think I remember them, yeah. I think I remember them.
You didn't roll with him, though, did you?
I don't think I did, no.
He was one of two green belts that were highly effective. Did you roll with the other, like a green belt that only came one time, and he was like very hard to deal with?
No, I missed that opportunity. That would have been cool.
That was a real good one. That guy had some kind of like triangle power. He was very tall for a 15-year-old, and he had the ability to close his guard super, super tight. So some green belts are like very good, and some are kids. They're all kids, but some are very, very good, and some are mediocre, just like all the belts. But I find that green belt is the one where they can either be completely blown over by the wind and still train for years, or they can be tapping out the purple belts. And long story short, that's what this kid was, that he was very good. But that's up on the channel.
It's funny how sometimes those green belts can go from green belts to blue belts, and you'll have like a blue belt at your local tournament that's been training for 10 plus years.
That's what they call that, a dirty blue belt, right?
I haven't heard that term, but I'll take your word for it. It's definitely a difficult, a very highly skilled blue belt.
Either that's a dirty blue belt, or the person has been a blue belt for like 10 years. But I would say they're both dirty blue belts. Blue belts that are, they're probably purple belts.
Probably, yeah.
So
and that's okay. If you find yourself in a tournament with a very good blue belt that's been training for a decade as a kid, and you are unable to win that match, don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it, period. Even if the person is a white belt and they beat you, it doesn't really matter.
Because they could be a D1 wrestler, white belt.
They could be, or they could have just did the technique right against you. That, anybody can make jiu-jitsu work. So sometimes you're just going to get beaten by people, and that's okay. If it matters too much, you'll dislike jiu-jitsu. You'll end up suffering from that. But if you don't care, then really it doesn't matter. You win, lose. Every time you win, it's going to be like a little shot of caffeine or something like that. And every time you lose, if you really don't have like it breaks your heart, then class doesn't, it turns into like nothing but a positive experience. But if you care, then you're gonna live and die by how many times you win and lose, and that's not a good way to be.
I think I do care or get the emotion of that good feeling when you do well or win a match, or maybe you do good against a roll against a really tough opponent that maybe you thought you weren't going to beat. Sometimes that feels so good, I'm not like expressionless like Fedor in those moments. I am like, I'll get a little excited. I'll throw my hands up, not in the gym after a roll, but I remember there was a couple times at a tournament where I was stoked to have pulled something off,
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with being happy that what you wanted to happen happened. But my thing is not to resist when what you wanted didn't happen. So of course you want to win, and if you don't win, you want to not lose. And if you can't do either of those, it means you lost in some way. So if you internalize that loss as you being defeated or some kind of negativity, then that's what I'm saying. That can't be. This is one of those things, spin it for the win, that you can't have a thing where you say, I was defeated. You can be tapped out and you can be beaten, but you can't be defeated. That's Nick Cooley. So
right,
that has to be inside you, or you're gonna make your belt color dependent on how many people that you step on, because you have to do that to feel good. But if that's not the case, if in training and rolling with people that you make your worth or your happiness about the fact that you're at class and that you were there at the beginning and you're there at the end, and that's a victory. You should be praised for that. So as you're being choked out or arm locked, you should think, I'm here, this is a victory. You're genuinely getting better. It's hard to see it that way, and we can say that all day, but it just stinks when you get tapped out. And it's easier said than done to say, don't let it affect you and don't take it a certain way. It's hard to do that. But I'm saying you don't have a choice. You're going to get beat. And you can take it two ways. Either it destroys you or it has no effect. And that's your choice. It really is. So I've just decided that I don't care. I can't care. I've rolled too much and done jiu-jitsu for too long. And I know that it just kind of goes, it ebbs and flows. You get tapped a certain amount and you tap a certain amount. And over time, your defense gets better and that number gets less and less and less. But for us, 1 in 20, like they tap us 1 in 20, that's like devastating. So if that is the case, then we're just waiting for the time for that 1 in 20 for it to devastate us. Then we can dwell on it and just let it eat us up. Or we can say, man, 19 times I wanted to go and I went. 19 times I wanted to stand up and I stood up. 19 times I wanted to take them down and I took them down. Who cares about that one time? That's your payment for being good at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it's not going to all work out every single time.
No, if it does, you're not testing your jiu-jitsu. If you're rolling with people that you're crushing every time, it's because you're avoiding the people that can crush you.
Yeah, and that's doing yourself a disservice. You definitely want to try out new things on newer people, just so you can kind of work out the mechanics just against a resisting opponent and build it up against better people. But you also need to get smashed, and I mean that certainly helps out your defense,
Yeah, I often think about how whenever I was on the red mat for so long, how often Scott would go behind that big curtain thing and he would put his gi on, and it was like the dog hearing the bell and salivating, but in the other direction. Like, oh, Scott's going behind the whatever that big curtain. So you can just feel your insides drop to the floor. Like he's going to come out here and wreak havoc.
Yeah.
And every single time, it's pretty much it's like roll number 1. Where's Joey? Where is he? Hey, come here. Let's roll.
You get the fresh Scott.
He gets me every single time. Probably like every time he put the gi on, maybe once or twice in that whole time, did he not say, hey, come here? And for the first 6 months, probably, he was letting me play a little bit. Like he was giving me a back and forth. And then at some point, he just started to kill. Like it started to be relentless domination. So with that relentless domination, I think what he was doing was slowly building up my ability to recognize supremacy, like supreme technique. And as I recognize, then I'm able to like scientifically examine and then spit out a jiu-jitsu response that is advanced. So he wanted to give me a good amount of information so that I could give him a response that was advanced. And that's what he did, I believe. So it was that he wanted me to give him more of a challenge. And I was given as much as I could give. It was just, it's hard to do no matter how good you are. If the person that you're fighting is extremely skilled, that they are a master of weight distribution, connection, hip pressure, control, like all the stuff that the little details that mean so much, they're like a master of it, a master of the fundamentals. And then throw on top of that he has the superhuman toughness of somebody that has been tested to the point that he will die before he will quit. So we have a Terminator that has learned jiu-jitsu the right way. And now he's aiming that Terminator jiu-jitsu, enhanced human robot performance at me. And that's a heck of a spot to be in. You have to really watch out. If the person is that good and that strong and tough, they're not going to get tired like a normal human. They're not going to be dissuaded or like their will is tested. That's not gonna. It's not even in the universe of possibilities. It's not like you take him down and then in his head he thinks, "Oh, they got my number." That's not a thing. He's somebody like that is always the mindset of I am gonna destroy you. And that, not to say that he was like looking at me thinking I'm going to destroy you. It's just that Terminators are programmed to terminate, right? Isn't that the case? The movie Terminator, they're programmed to kill.
But I mean, but the whole time, he's it sounds like he is, I guess, trying to get you
sharpened.
Right, exactly. Like he's getting you in certain positions, kind of seeing and dialing some things in. Is he giving you feedback?
Oh yeah, constantly, definitely.
Awesome.
Yeah, he improved everything that I did, and intentionally. Exactly what he said in that interview is the truth. That he did the same thing that I did with you, except as the next level and the right way. It's like I'm not to that point of understanding yet, that I'm able to bring somebody from the beginning to an advanced perspective, but I can't go too far past that. That's a pretty good distance. So making somebody who is completely clueless of jiu-jitsu transform into someone who has a solid foundation in jiu-jitsu is fairly difficult unless you've been trained to do that. And I'm capable of doing that part. from that point to now I have an understanding how to beat that guy. That's even more difficult. But I think I have the ability to do that. But what he is able to do is take that person who is already advanced, and so they're like a sharp knife. I showed up a sharp knife. So he looked at the knife, and he looked at the way that the hinge is built and the sharpness and all that. And he said, how can I make this knife like the perfect weapon? How can I make it as sharp as it will ever be? How can I make it a little bit better? What can I do? And all of those ways that he just slowly sharpened and whittled, and every question that I asked, he immediately answered. Every failure or mistake, it was never brought to my attention like, hey, what's wrong with you? Or aren't you supposed to be a purple belt? Nothing like that, even though I'm sure there were times that's what I don't want to say that's what he thought. There are certainly times where my performance and skill level wouldn't have lived up to what it should. Now, whether he thought that, I have no idea. But I definitely know that what he saw, he knew exactly how to make better, and exactly how to correct those mistakes without me feeling like, what,
dog crap.
I've wasted my time. Yeah,
right.
What a loser. Nothing like that. I felt every correction and bit of advice was in the best format possible. Like, hey, you are doing a fantastic job. Truly. This thing that you do is awesome. It's perfect. It looks like I told you that one time that he said, you look like the Gracie in action tapes. So what do you think that made me do with that technique?
Oh, you definitely believed in it.
I believe in it. Not only do I believe in that technique, him saying that makes me want to do it right this second, like to stand up and start practicing.
Right.
But if he thought that then man, if I repeat, and it's 2 years from now, what's it going to look like then? So that's the way that he is able to inspire and progress each student wherever they're coming, wherever they're coming from. So you might be a white belt with no knowledge. He knows how to build you from there. You might be showing up as a purple belt like I was. He knows exactly where to pick up and take off from there. And that's a heck of a proposition. If you've never thought about that, you're showing up as a person who has already kind of written half a book, and you're saying, hey, can you read this first part of the book and then write the last part of the book for me? And then it has to all make sense somehow. That's pretty dang difficult. But that's what he did, that he was able to take me from purple to brown, and like that legitimate process, I don't question. Like a lot of people will say, I don't think I'm ready, or I don't feel like a brown belt. But I felt from purple to brown the growth and that sharpening. Like I experienced the hike in ability. So I never questioned if that was legitimate or not, because if somebody like that says yes, then the answer is yes. If they say no, the answer is no. And a lot of sport people will probably have a problem with that. That it's too, like, what if you're dealing with Heaven's Gate? If it's yes, it's yes. Well, that sounds like a cult, you know. But that's not necessarily the case. But just quickly here, what's an example? If a math teacher tells you 1 + 1 = 2, you can look into that, but 1 + 1 does equal 2. So it's just a very complex math problem, and he's a math teacher in this analogy, and he's saying like 175 billion divided by 7.95 whatever equals this. And if you dig into that deep enough, you'll find that is exactly what the answer is. So that's what we have here. It's just trust that this system is correct.
Well, he's a great teacher.
I'm thinking, so the Gracie Academy, and even to an extent me, like you said, that we have similar methods, and that's not by coincidence. But he has that same ability and method driven through his own filter, just like we talked about previously. That whole process driven through that filter is like a perfect weapon that has it's a rifle. It's the best rifle in the world, whatever that is, that also has a grenade launcher and also has a parachute that comes out the top, and it also tells the future. So it's a weapon unlike any other, and that's what kind of teacher that you have there. A weapon unlike any other makes people into weapons unlike any other. So jiu-jitsu is already perfect. Whenever somebody like that is teaching it, it's perfect. Plus, you are made into a biting dog.
Well, plus Scott cares about his students. Like, you can tell, like, he pours into them, you know? And it's a big contrast. I was listening to Craig Jones on his podcast, and he was talking about, I mean, they joke around a lot, but I think there's a little bit of truth to this. They're talking about, hey, you have to be a marketer, you have to, like, take care of community, you have to learn people's names, and they kind of were, like, joking about, like, how it sucks to do that, you know? Rather than it, you know, I think you and I would consider it a privilege and an honor.
Of course. That's an absurd statement. He said that.
Yeah, but I mean, the guy jokes around so much. I'm wondering, like, how much he is. Maybe he's half kidding. I don't know. I'd like to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's like, oh man, I wonder if it's just like, hey, I'm just trying to pay the bills. Like, he seems like he learns and he teaches.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe he likes teaching certain people and not. I don't know. He makes a ton of jokes about, like, hobbyists.
Yeah, he's an idiot. he's super good at rolling, but he is just a black eye to jiu-jitsu, like Frank Shamhocky's braces, and he deserves all the bad stuff that comes his way, as far as like criticism and anything that like that. I don't wish badly upon Craig Jones, but he's a terrible face of jiu-jitsu, and he does the honor of jiu-jitsu poor, that he's a terrible representative, and I just can't say enough bad stuff about Craig Jones. But I was also thinking that as far as the names and all that stuff, that we care about all of that stuff more than anything else, because we genuinely care to teach people and make them better, and he doesn't, or at least he's playing that role, that character.
Well, he certainly jokes around about it. I mean, and some of his students are really good, and I'm wondering, like, I mean, you see some of the videos, he's definitely legitimately teaching people. Like, he was going over back to, he's going over escapes if they have, like, the body lock, and it was definitely some interesting stuff, I thought it was pretty cool, but I'm wondering, like, how many classes he teaches, and, like, I don't know, it's just weird to joke around about, like, I guess not liking to teach. And maybe it's him being a comedian. Like, he says a lot of goofy stuff. He definitely made me laugh when he was talking about Nicky Rod and, him, like, using lotion and stuff like that. He said, I'm not saying he lotions, but he's never ashy. I mean, that shit was funny.
Well, he's one of the exact type of people, probably one of the ones that Draculino was talking about as well, that he's a big talker. He's a loud source of information. That doesn't mean that he can't teach and, make people better at jiu-jitsu. But the question is, could he make like a 65-year-old woman good at jiu-jitsu? Could he make somebody that is,
nope.
Very unathletic, like Nick Cooley? Could he make him? Somebody made Nick Cooley. I mean, Nick was going to be he's a different kind of circumstance. But how about a 65-year-old woman?
Well, he was talking about, like, I guess he was kind of joking about they don't have a women's class. They don't cater to that type of athlete or hobbyist.
It's because he's wouldn't be able to do it. I would venture to say.
Yeah.
He wants athletes.
He's not teaching self-defense, even though, I mean, because he used to train in the gi, but he wasn't, like, super successful at it. I mean, he was talking about he went to no gi just for, I guess, less people were doing it when he got into it. And then EBI came around.
Well, I stand by my opinion that he's a terrible representative, because there's gonna be a big time segment of people that are turned away because of his attitude and the way that he goes about business, and that stinks because they need it the most and he's not giving it to them. But you can't blame a rattlesnake for not having wings.
I mean, he's a great practitioner. Like, he would destroy me.
Yeah, of course, he would destroy us both. I mean, we could probably attack him at the same time, and he would with jiu-jitsu, and he would be able to deal with it. But it doesn't matter. We could take a room of 100 geriatric, like nursing home patients, and every single one of them will be able to do whatever the technique is that we show them. Then I don't know if that's the case with him. He requires a certain intensity, athleticism, and we require nothing.
Yeah, if we took 50 senior citizens, and he took 50 senior citizens, and we trained them for a year, and then we had a tournament, like our students would do better than his students?
Definitely. Our people wouldn't get tapped out. They wouldn't get tired. And that would be the biggest difference. Because they're all geriatric. None of them has size, strength, power. They're all in the same boat. So it's just going to come down to technique. And our people also have the mindset of just don't let them win. So definitely our people are going to do better. If you're listening, you should come to the light. And not to beat a dead horse, but the last thing before we cut this podcast, I was thinking about this earlier whenever I was trying to make put it into words, that sport jiu-jitsu people think that a fight is just sport jiu-jitsu plus punches. But a fight is Gracie jiu-jitsu. And that's the difference. That Gracie jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu with the survival mindset and the practice and implementation of techniques in the system where punches happen. So knowledge of where punches come from, where they're possible, how to defend them in all those positions, how to protect your face, how to protect your head from guillotines and headlocks and all this kind of stuff. That's Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. So it's not sport Jiu-Jitsu plus punching. It's Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. So that's the difference. That's why that person isn't equally prepared the sport person isn't equally prepared. They prepared for a sport competition. Then a fight, they're going to add punches. We prepared for Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, a Jiu-Jitsu with punches. So one of us is prepared, the other one isn't actually prepared. So that's what I got to say about that.